In my previous video I showed you the best layout for base in StarRupture, and while I still stand by the claim, my previous video was more of a proof of concept, a showcase of pull system and evidence that you don't have to overthink this game if you have time to spare. Many of you wrote me asking for a layout, and thanks to Papa's idea in Discord, thank you daddy, I took on the task to not just make a blueprint of what I had already made, but improve on it, so that I can say that I truly made the best base layout, and this claim is supported by science. So this one goes out to all the nerds that want to speedrun StarRupture. Without further ado, I present to you the better than best base layout. So what do we have here? 5 smelters being fed by these extractors, just like the last time. Oh yes, by the way, I chose a different location this time just because I didn't want to destroy my last build, which of course still works perfectly fine. In that location there is enough extractors to have exactly 10 smelters. That is perfect, exactly the number we need. Also, many told me that I was too fast in my previous video, so this is how I'm going to be showing everything today. Excuse me for my ugly rail drawings. All the numbers here are per minute. Green cells are outputs, red cells are inputs. So a smelter makes 60 bars per minute. We have 5, so that's 300 bars per minute. I talked in the previous video about how important it is to look at throughputs of your rails. We know that rail V2 only supports 240 per minute, which means one of those smelters has to be hooked to fabricators directly. If you have access to rail V3, it's of course not a problem to hook all the smelters to one rail, and in the case of rail V1, you would want to have 3 separate rails instead. But why don't we just have 4 smelters instead of 5, you'll ask? Because 5 smelters is the sweet spot for producing everything that we need with no downtime and no leftovers. Check this out. 11 fabricators in this exact configuration require exactly 300 titanium bars per minute, and they all produce exactly the amount of materials needed to power 4 fabricators and 2 furnaces at 100% uptime. This row of fabricators produces exactly 240 titanium tubes, and remember how many materials our rail version 2 can support. That's right, 240, so it all fits nicely. But let's say you're just starting the game and only have access to the first rail, but still want to be efficient and already build an efficient base that you won't have to rebuild or change in any way. In this case, you would connect at most 2 smelters to 4 fabricators. Then you'd have these 3 fabricators hooked up, and these 3 fabricators hooked up separately from each other, and each feeding into 2 fabricators instead of all combining and going into 4. And then, instead of 1 rail going from the 2 fabricators, you'd have 2. You see, the throughput of rails is the biggest bottleneck in this game. And since this is a pull system and not a push system, when determining how many items will be traveling on a rail, you need to look at the buildings that request items, not those that produce. So if you sum up all these buildings, you'll know that they will be pulling exactly 240 items through these rails. And we have to always be mindful of this number, because when the number of products being sent on one rail exceeds its capacity, that's when you begin seeing throttling. See, this batch of fabricators has a separate rail from the left batch. This is because the fabricators on the left already request 240 materials, and if I connect these 2 parts together, then we'll have to sum these inputs up. It will be 420, and so our rails will be clogged. Of course, we could do that if we had access to the third version of rail, but I think mid-game is the time when people would be searching for this sort of video, and so that's what I'm focusing on. So, 5 fabricators here also produce the exact amount of stuff needed to power 2 furnaces at 100% efficiency and get 60 titanium housing every minute. So what can we do with 240 tubes and 60 titanium housing per minute? Well, how about 480 tubes and 120 housing? That's right, there's another layer below. Inspired by Quizak86 in Discord, I made a second layer to make use of the tight space and utilize the full potential of the deposits. If you're curious how, apparently you can stack pillars on top of platforms. And then, using the knowledge from my base building guide, check it out here, we know that each pillar supports 6 tiles in each direction, plus everything diagonally in between. We need to put 2 pillars on top of another, spaced about 4 tiles apart on one side and 5 tiles on the other, but just build the first floor first and then you'll figure it out. Just make sure to have a supported platform underneath, or else it won't let you put up the pillars. Also, you don't have to go to menu every time. You can switch between pillars and platforms by clicking M. The devs really hate to put contextual controls on screen, don't they? And when placing platforms at the top, if you're getting the error building not stable, place them one by one and it will work out in the end. But this is not necessary at all. You can just build this second module somewhere else. What's important is that we have 10 smelters and get 480 tubes, 120 titanium housing, and some of these additional materials for when the tube and housing producers are not needed. 240 titanium rods, 480 titanium sheets, and 120 beams. This will let us produce everything that we will be looking into next. So let's see if this setup even works or if I'm just blowing hot air here. You see, it works very well. Nothing gets stuck anywhere, it's all smooth like butter and actually pretty pleasing, like running toy trains in childhood. I think I'll just leave it running for 10 minutes so we can just enjoy this together. Wait, what's this? The fabricators on the last line go through downtime from time to time. How so? Well, this is the result of us having such long rails. Once the stocks get a chance to fill up, this will stop happening. The rail isn't that long to worry either way. Also notice that there is no difference between these connectors and these splitters in terms of speed. And merging doesn't seem to affect the speed that much either. Either way, this is how the most efficient titanium production looks. I must mention that this is the part where flexibility of my last build will give way to rigidity for the sake of efficiency. The working principle of the last build was that you never produce all the items at the same time, because you have to run around searching for blueprints, because you're too busy to set up production, because you haven't yet reached the corporation levels needed, and so on and so on. There's many reasons why your machines would be idling, and that was the way that I'd been playing the game, slow and steady. But winging it gets progressively more difficult as you reach higher corporation levels, and then it's time to look at hard numbers and adjust. Just look at these crazy numbers. Even when you optimize everything, and I'll explain all of this in a bit, you'll still need 100 minutes to pass level 9 with your lens production. So all of this, 2 floors of titanium production, making use of all the titanium deposits in this location, plus all the other materials like synthetic silicon, glass, sulfuric acid and resin, and the best you get is 100 minutes. So if you want to reach the top levels, there's nothing to do but to take these models that I'm showing you and copy them multiple times. They're mathematically the best you can get. If you want more, you need to build more of the same. But materials you produce never become useless, and so my advice would be to build correctly with efficiency in mind from the very start, so that you don't have to rebuild anything when you decide you want to please the shareholders. And this is why I'm making this video, so that everyone has access to an efficient build and doesn't have to waste their life away on this. Okay, with that out of the way, what can we do with 480 tubes and 120 titanium housing? Well, a couple of things. Apart from the lens production that I mentioned, how about we make stators, inductors, electronics and batteries, or rotors, stabilizers, heat-resistant sheets, impellers and turbines? Or maybe you want some nozzles, valves or pumps. In this spreadsheet that I'll share with you, I've prepared process maps for every production chain that involves titanium products. So, I call these modules. All of them are connected to other modules either through rails or cargo receivers. All these buildings share the same module because they share ingredients and feed from one another. Let's look at one of them. So on the right we have a list of things that are produced here. On the left, the amounts that are needed to produce everything in the module and how much is actually being produced. We can see that we need 480 tubes to produce at maximum efficiency, which is the amount we're getting from our setup, and that's either 2 rails of version 2 or 1 rail that is version 3. I marked them with blue dots so you can easily tell which rail is which. For example, this red dot means, housing. Okay, so we need 2 rails with 240 tubes each. That's how much each of the titanium floors produce. That's already at max capacity for the rail, so glass will have to be moved separately through cargo receivers. 4 furnaces total means that you need to have 4 furnaces to make 64 glass. It's not 4 for each cargo receiver. I showed in the previous video a working example with chemicals, and I showed how it looks when a rail gets overwhelmed and how to fix it. If you haven't seen my previous video, do check it out. So 4 fabricators will produce 60 applicators total. That's enough for 4 furnaces. Now I have a cargo receiver for synthetic silicon, and because I can see here on the left that the total will once again surpass the 240 that my rail can handle, I will have to set up separate cargo receivers for sulfuric acid. The blue line here means that it's going out of the loop to go to the orbital cargo launcher row at the end of the whole setup. If you look on the right hand side, there's a table of how much we're producing with these setups, how many launchers we need, and how much time it will take. By the way, it takes 6 seconds for one orbital cargo launcher to send a shipment. That's only 10 per minute, not very fast, so you always want to have multiple set to the same corporation. The next in line, hardening agents, will go much faster than applicators. They too will travel on a loop and then exit to the cargo launcher row, but they'll also join in with resin to make lenses. And then, as I said, we make lenses, but only 15 per minute, and we will need to send them for 100 minutes to get 100 war bonds. So that's not good, is it?
I'm in danger!
But at least we know exactly how much stuff we need, and that it all works out neatly without any weird leftovers anywhere or anything. At least in this module. In the next one, you can see that everything is also produced nice and neat. So if I were playing from the beginning again, I would build 2 titanium modules at each location with titanium deposits, or more if they had more, and send in calcium and wolfram through rails or cargo shippers to each of them. Then I would build these different modules for advanced production, and this way when I reach the stage where you have to produce a ton of endgame materials, you already had everything ready to just ship through cargo shippers to one final module and produce those endgame materials to please those corporations. Because look, even here with the turbines, it's already evident we're not going to be producing enough titanium with just 2 modules to make enough rotors to make 2 batches of turbines. And then you have to make pumps and generators from those turbines too. It's ruthless. So I wish you luck with this game and patience to push through. I will leave the spreadsheet that me and Papa contributed to in the description of this video. Feel free to make a copy or download it. You don't need a Google account, by the way. And if you decide to contribute too, let me know in the Discord so I can add your stuff to the original spreadsheet. There is still plenty of materials to work through, more than I have mental capacity for. Cheers.